First time I ever played Red Faction, I was probably about like 11, 12 years old. It was on the PS2. Played the PlayStation 2 demo. Yeah, that was my first experience with the game. Um, I just remember like it was like one of those games that was just like unlike anything that I played at that point. You know, the whole Geomod and everything. Like it was, yeah, it's really captured my attention back then. I want to say like 2003, maybe. I just seen it like in the store and just bought it. I mean, I grew up playing PlayStation, so I was really into I don't know, just the games around that time, like Resident Evil 1 and Metal Gear Solid. Really big into Crash Bandicoot. Um, the first like PC game I ever played was actually like Duke Nukem 3D. So that was pretty much like the only like FPS or first person shooter game that I've played up till that point. Yeah, then like Red Faction came along and yeah, it just blew my mind. Red Faction, it was kind of like the very first game that I actually started playing online. Well, there was like a couple other games, like some RPGs around the time. I was playing with my brother online, but that was the first like actual, I guess, like first person shooter that I started playing more frequently online. I wasn't really into that stuff. The only community that I like took part in was like Levels for You. You know, the big website that had all the Red Faction levels and dinner is served. Like I wasn't really any part of like any clans. It was a server back then, like mid 2000s, I think. Gosh, it was really good. So many late nights playing in that server. Just a lot of fun, I guess. I think it was like one of those servers that like kind of rivaled like Red Faction Info. I think I spent most of my time playing there. It was DM. They had like an assortment of maps that kind of like you know, like they change the lineup every now and then. I'm not sure if you're familiar with like Hapahanu. He was the one who ran that server. I don't really know much about him. I just know that he did dinner served. He also did a server called Lucky Frag. I know he's like a really smart guy. Plays on a Mac. Red Faction was like my introduction to that, and like the only game that I know anything about level design with. When I first started learning about it, I used the Red Help file. It had like all the basics, you know, how to do brushwork and set up events, like keyframes and stuff like that. That's when I first started learning it. But yeah, like when you first look at it, like I remember when I first looked at it, it was just like, the hell is this? Like, how do they make anything out of this? Just like you got all these grids and all these different buttons and shit. Like, what does all this mean? Yeah, I went into the Red Help file and yeah, just started like just you know just reading everything and just doing everything step by step. It was just maps that I was interested in. Just the level design aspects of the game. I don't know enough to like you know do mods um, like other kinds of software. I guess I wish I did. But I think it was around like 2005 when I like first discovered Levels for You. I was probably like 14, 15 at the time. To the mid 2000s. There was like a couple other websites. I can't think of now. But yeah, Levels for You was like I don't know. That place was the bomb. I mean, I spent like most of my time like learning everything, you know, about Red, like past the like help file and like like all the different maps, like custom maps. Like this is the first time I like discovered custom maps was from Levels for You, and like seeing that there was other people who actually made maps, and that like totally blew my mind, and give me more inspiration to get better at Red. Yeah, there's like quite a few mappers that I see in like Mad Ferret. Like that guy just like fucking blew my mind, like what he could do. Um, I'm not sure if you're familiar with him. He made the map All Around the World, or it has like all the like big landmarks like the Eiffel Tower and the Big Ben and stuff. Like he made that map. That just blew my mind. It just like inspired me to get better at Red. There's also Rex, the guy who made all the microfaction maps like that. Like I'd never seen anything like that. Like, whoa, you're just like this tiny mouse or like cockroach in this big office or whatever. And yeah, that was just mind blowing to me. And I guess that's what made like Levels for You special to me. Was like just it was just a huge like discovery for me. I guess that just like opened my world up. A lot. It's just like the game that I always played like throughout like middle school and high school. Like I didn't really interact with them, like just on like the website. I like post things or whatever, ask them questions like through the forums. But I was just kind of like a lone wolf kind of mapper, I guess, level designer. Didn't really collaborate with anybody. See, like from I don't know, like whenever I like make levels, I like just playing like single player maps. It's always fun to just sit there and just tunnel forever, you know. There was like certain mods, like the weird mod I remember a long time ago, where you could just fire a rocket at a wall and it's just like this big ass crater, and that would just go on forever. But for me, I never really like implemented it that well with my own maps. I was always more into like just I guess like design aesthetics or detail and stuff. And I mean, I would use it for like secrets, like blasting into a wall or something, and there being like a power up or something like that. I really like the last one that I did, Delusions. Um, that one took God, that one was a fucking headache. I don't know. It just like it was kind of like the map that I've always kind of wanted to make, but never really felt like I was like a skilled enough or consistent with myself enough to do it. So when I actually made it, it was just like wow, like um, I actually felt like a sense of accomplishment. I mean, I always kept going back to Red. Um, yeah, I don't think I've ever stopped mapping. I've always like just gone back and just used Red like it's a palette or something, like an empty canvas or something. I just go back, just mess around with it. But yeah, I mean, there was a period of time where I stopped playing Red Faction. I was like into other games, but like level design wise, just like I would always go back and just open up Red and just kind of noodle around or something. Espear, the mapper Espear, that guy, yeah, he was really unique. Um, really loved the like he kind of like had like realism in his maps. I think he used like kind of like more realistic architecture and stuff like that. Um, he made this map called like Corpses Crossroads. That's just fantastic. I think. Yeah, there's Espear. Wizard was really good. Yeah, he was kind of like Rex. He made like kind of like micro maps, but they had like certain themes to them. Like he made a Mother Goose map. I think he made one that had like SpongeBob, like a giant like SpongeBob statue that you could like crawl inside of and like snipe out of and shit. That's yeah. Those guys were good. Glass House. It's just like a sandbox, You got this big empty glass house. He's blowing all the fucking candles. Like, oh, what do I do now? Well, you start blasting the walls. You just tunnel and tunnel away. There's this map called Marauder by by this dude by the name of Kerpal. It's really good. I'm just kidding. That's one of my maps. No, but Microfaction I think was great. I just think that's like an instant classic for a map. Microfaction. Um, there was like a remake of Deck 16 from Unreal Tournament that I thought was fantastic. We played that a lot on the Dinner Served server. That's just a great map. I know it's like not like someone's original creation, but it's I thought it was always a fantastic like port or remake. The last game that we played on Dinner is Server, Dinner is Served, Dinner is Served server. The last game that we played before the server shut down. Gosh, there was like so many people in that server. Yeah, yeah. Rest in peace, Dinner is Served. Yeah, that was my favorite memory. Like overall, of the game, it was all great. I guess it still is. I mean, there's not that many people playing anymore, but yeah, it's still kind of there. But which I'm glad that Faction Files is still around. Like I think if it weren't around, like this game wouldn't even be where it is now, in my opinion. I played Guerrilla a little bit. Played a little bit of Red Faction 2. Didn't think it was for me. I didn't think Guerrilla was really for me either, but I liked it, I guess. But Red Faction 1 is just OG. Just nothing beats RF1. Yeah, I was like, because I was spending a lot more time playing Team Fortress 2. Probably like 2010, 2009, 2010. Yeah, kind of just like when I came back, I was just, oh wow, there's like far less servers than there were um, like a few years ago, like back in 2007 or 2008. I think around like 2008, it felt like it was sort of dying out. Like servers were just disappearing and there weren't as many people playing. But when I came back, like I think I came back around 2014 and seen that Levels for You was still kind of there. Then I think it like shut down like shortly afterwards or something, and yeah, like it wasn't really the same game, at that point, or community wise, like there just weren't really that many people playing. So yeah, it just kind of rapidly just died off, unfortunately. Lucky Frag was another server by Hapahanu who did Dinner Served. He started that right after Dinner Served. If I remember, that was a second server that he started, and him and I like we collaborated. Like, well, he made his own maps and I made some maps. I only finished like one and released it. I played like RF Info, which is still around. I played that. Played in that server quite a bit, but yeah, it's mostly just wherever Hapahanu was. Yeah, wherever he went, I went. I do remember people cheating. Yeah, I did. Well, I mean, I've seen them. They would like they have like the fly cheat or something. I do remember people just like flying really fast through walls and like having like rapid fire rail or something. Like I do remember that. But that was never really a bad experience. It was just more like, whoa, that's pretty cool. That dude's obviously like modding or but yeah, it was interesting. Like every now and then there's somebody who just broke the game somehow and like they're coming to the server and then they're flying through walls and like rapid fire rail and yeah, that was pretty unique, I guess. Pretty interesting. I don't know, man. It's just kind of like I guess it's kind of like a niche thing, Like it's always something that I've been into since like high school. It's like people like still playing like old games and stuff, and like I see people still making maps for Doom and Quake, and I thought like, well, why not? Like John Romero did a sigil for Ultimate Doom, and so like what, like that kind of inspired me to like just open up Red. It's like why would you ever stop? Just like I guess once people stop playing the game entirely, it doesn't make sense to make maps that nobody will ever play. But Yeah, I guess the answer to that is just like I have no real interest to ever quit doing it. It's just something that I've always been into and continue to do, I guess, until I'm dead or until Red Faction shits or something. That'll be on my that'll be on my tombstone. I just want to say, like, thanks to Goober, Nick, and all you guys for like seriously, like keeping like a community like together and having game nights and like Red Faction United and everything. Thank you for doing that. Like, I mean, it just like still piques people's interest in the game, and that's good. I think games like this, need that sort of thing. So yeah, good on you guys for doing that.